Hi guys, it's me. I want to give you guys a quick video about the tech pack. So the tech pack is in chapter 11, and I did upload another video, and that was just covering sort of the quality part of this chapter as well as the testing. So this is just about the tech pack and sort of like the important things that you need to pull out of it. So just running through quickly, you can turn to your book or you can pull up the PowerPoints, whichever is easiest for you. But generally, the tech pack is one of the most important things that you need in order to make a quality garment. So the tech pack is inclusive of every single piece of information that you need to give to the factory or the vendor to, or whomever is making your product to put out exactly the type of product that you want. So the people that usually work on the tech pack is a lot about the technical designer. They do most of the measurements. A lot of the times they'll do the flat sketches. The designer is in there updating things. The product people, depending on the role. So the roles of your job will depend on where you work. And everybody's company runs a little bit differently. But so, very important. The thing about a tech pack is that you want to put the time in up front. If you do not take the time to make sure you have everything accurate and correct, you're going to have a problem on the back end. So, you'd rather take the time, although it seems daunting up front when you're doing it, make sure that you're looking at everything over and over again, make sure there's no mistakes so that you can basically have something right the first time. So, the better off the tech pack is, the better off your sample is going to be. So the vendor is going to take the tech back and take it verbatim. They're going to look at it and they're going to follow exactly what you ask them to do most of the time. So they're going to follow your sketch. They're going to follow your measurements. They're going to follow your design details. They're going to follow all of your pictures, all of your drawings. So if things don't add up and one thing doesn't match up to the other, then they're going to be confused. And you never want your vendor to be confused because they'll either ask you, which is great, and then you'll answer, or they won't. And then they'll decide what they want to do on their own. And then you have a surprise when you get their sample in. So you never really want that. So, anyways, so we're going to kind of run through page by page kind of what the tech pack entails. I'll give you a little bit of an overview quickly. Um, we would usually spend a lot of time on this in class, but obviously this is a little bit different circumstance. And I know you design students, you do a tech pack. I don't know to what level that you do it, but this will maybe a little bit more detail. So you need to think about the tech pack as that you're speaking to somebody that doesn't speak English usually. So you need to be as clear as day. Um, in the tech pack, more information is better, more pictures, more images, more, we call it a call out page. So anything that is sort of a blown up area of the garment where you can kind of write details on it or write directions on it. Those are really important, and the vendor really does appreciate those because it makes it easier for them. A lot of words, a lot of writing is not the greatest thing because usually English is not their first language, so they do better off with pictures or with images. Obviously, you need to have writing in there, but if you have more words than measurements, then there's more room for them to get it wrong. Okay, so with that being said, just running through quickly a couple important parts. Starting in your book, so usually your company will have a format that they follow, and the format will be sort of continuous through your department. And every style that you do, the format will most likely be the same. Usually, if you're working in a PLM system, then that's all done on the computer. You can drop down, you do the drop down boxes, and then everything is sort of prompted. So all the language is the same. That seems daunting at first, but it becomes easier because everything is in the library. If not, you probably will work in Excel. Those of you probably all know Excel, but that's what we're going to be doing for our project. We're going to be doing an old school Excel tech back. So most of the tech pack, the header will always remain the same format, and you're just going to fill in your information. And so what people you do is you'll basically save the tech pack, and then you get another style, and then you'll save as and keep going and keep going and keep going, and just basically building your library, and saving it by the style number. Each style will get an individual tech pack, um, because they're always different. So even if a style is a carryover style, you're going to want to give it a new style number because it's a new season. It's going to need a new purchase order. It's basically needs to be remade again. So it would need to have some sort of a difference, to flag it in the system. That's just an FYI. Anyways, so moving on. So technical flats. So page header, we talked about, that will have your company name, your department, the style number, your quality, all of those things that are very, very important. Same thing as we talked about with the reference card. All of that information that you need to track a garment, that's going to be on there. Technical flats, really important. Those are going to be on the first page. You're going to have a lot of flat sketches on there. You're going to have detailed sketches. You're going to have front, back. Whatever you feel that is necessary to have the garment made is what needs to be on there. The technical flats need to be accurate. They need to be correct. They need to be to scale, and they need to be clear. And then your measurement chart. So your measurement chart will have all of the measurements needed in order to make a garment. And so if you're doing sweaters, it'll be different than if you're doing pants or dresses, et cetera, et cetera. But same idea. You'll start from a block. So you might have a style that reminds you of a style that you've done in the past. What you'll do is you'll take the measurements, probably the block measurements from that previous style, and then you'll tweak them, or you'll start from scratch depending on what your technical designer wants to do. But all the measurements will go in, into the sample area, um, the this, the initial spec, or is the correct terminology. The measurements will go in there, and that is what the vendor is going to read in order to make your sample. So the other thing, and I can't remember if I said this or not, but you're only giving the measurements for one size. So whether or not your company does a size 6 or a medium or an extra, extra large, whatever it is that you sample in, those are the measurements that you give. You do not open up the measurements to a full grade until the fit sample is approved. The reason why we do this is so that the vendor doesn't continue with production without things being approved, because they're known to want to get ahead. So you kind of have to make sure that you keep things kind of closer to you to make sure that they're doing everything, and getting things that you're getting things that you actually want, and that they're correct. So for quality, cutting instructions. So we talked about cutting instructions a little bit. Basically, it's a plan that you will give the vendor in order how you want the pieces to be matched up. That's one thing. The other thing is that you want to make sure in your tech back that you're giving them as much information as you can, but you also want to make sure that you're leaving enough room for flexibility, because these vendors, they're experts. They know these garments in and out. This is what they do all day long. So you also need to understand that they might know a better way to do things than you. So you need to sort of walk the line of that. You want to give them clear direction on how you want things done, but you also want to leave a little bit of room for flexibility for them to be like, well, we think that this is a better way, or this is more cost effective, or this will have a better quality garment. You want to make sure that you have that dialogue with them, and that you are open-minded in receiving feedback, because we can definitely learn a lot from them. Let's see. The other thing in the tech pack is the special instructions. So if you have a garment that has anything, any design details on it, any embroideries, um, denim, we'll talk about this a little bit. If you have holes in it, or writing on anything, you're going to want to call that out. So anything that is special, unique, or would need measurements in addition to the body spec, you need to call that out in the tech pack. And you'll need artwork usually, you'll need to assign colors to it. You'll need to give them everything that they need in order to get that done. And it'll need to be, you will need to submit an actual size artwork, and you'll have to put placement on the sketch. So making sure that your sketch is indicative of the design detail that you're looking for. It's very important. Um, so your vendor could be called, is somebody that is obviously making the garment for you, but sometimes these vendors, they don't do everything. So depending on what their qualifications are or what their forte is, if you have an embroidery or like painting on denim or something like that, they might use what's it called, as a subcontractor. So a subcontractor is somebody that they subcontract out jobs. So your vendor might do steps A through G, and then when they get to that sort of back pocket detail and they're going to embroider it, then they send it out to a subcontractor. So literally somebody comes and picks up the pieces and they go and they make it somewhere else, and then they'll bring it back to the vendor to finish it up and pack it, et cetera, et cetera. So this is good because it gets it done, but it's also hard because they don't always tell you that they're subcontracting out. So you might not always know where your garments are and like in what part of production they're in. So sometimes it gets hard, especially if you run into trouble, sort of finding out where things are at in the process. And it also, the more subcontracting that a vendor does, the more opportunity there is for a delivery delay. So sewing instructions. Sewing instructions are important. In the book, there's a ton of information about stitches, seams, et cetera, et cetera. I do encourage you to take a look at them. I'm not going to run through them with you. It's a lot of TMI, but it's something that's good to just swing through. Why it's important is that you need to indicate exactly what kind of seam that you want in your garment. You need to indicate how you want it finished. A good example is a lot of knits, they're finished by a serger or an overlock machine. That's important. You don't want a raw edge unless you do want a raw edge. Something like a cover stitch is like in athletic wear. You see it around the neckline. That's a different machine. All these things, they give a different detail to the garment. And sometimes, like we're going to talk about denim because that's what our project is going to be on. The stitches make a difference. So sometimes you'll want a double needle, sometimes you want a single needle, sometimes you want bar tacks, sometimes you don't. All these are important, and the placement is important. So when you're doing a sketch, you want to make sure that your sketch is showing exactly where the stitches are and what type of stitches are there. And if they're different, sometimes your thread will be different. Sometimes your thread will change. You'll have a different thread color for your neckline or if that's part of your design detail. So seam allowance is the excess. So you have your stitch line and then you have your extra amount of fabric. So your seam allowance is that extra. So usually industry standard, it's a 1/2 inch. On wovens, it's usually 3/8 of an inch. On knits, just because they have more give. That's on any sort of straight seam. On a curved seam around the neckline or the armhole, it's going to be more like 1/4 of an inch. So it does change. So stitches per inch, it's the amount of stitches per inch, literally. So it varies depending on what kind of garment you're doing and what kind of quality that you have. All of these will be in your tech bag. So you will You will indicate that usually on your design detail page. You'll indicate that on a sketch, and you'll indicate it usually maybe in your bill of materials, exactly sort of what you're working with. Let's see, another interesting, yeah, serging, overlock machines, cover stitch machines, chain stitch machines, lock stitch machines are usually used for wovens. And then they show you all of these. And then they talk about the ASTM a lot, and that is the definition of that is the Association of American Society for Testing and Materials. It's just the outline of that. And SPI, stitches per inch, of that. So let's see. Knits versus wovens. We talked about this a little bit. Yeah, serging, cover stitch, chain stitch, commodity versus fashion stitch in the other video. So technical detail sketches. So details of complex operations is what it says, or non-sewing operations may have to be specified in additional pages outside of the list of seams and stitches. So this would be like pocket placement, button spacing, and overlap. Location of tabs. If you had an epaulette on your sleeve, you would want to have a diagram saying exactly where you want the epaulette placed, how long you wanted the epaulette for. If you wanted a button there, where would the button lie? Things like that. Style of zipper, and if there's any top stitching, you want to indicate that as well in your sketch. So non-sewing, so pressing. So there's a lot of things that happen that aren't sewing. So a lot of garments, they get professionally pressed after that they're finished, and that pressing can basically alter the garment in a different way. So sometimes so we talked about tolerance a little bit, if a garment is out of tolerance, depending on what kind of fabric or quality it's from, sometimes they can press it back to shape just by using steam and an iron. It's that a professional presser is that aggressive in a way. So, but also it could go on the other end that sometimes things are overpressed. So you have these hard lines that obviously aren't that attractive. So you need to make sure that you're commenting on that when you're looking at samples. And if they are overpressing something, you're going to call it out. And then it's also known as to be subjective pressing. So somebody's actually doing it. So you need to make sure that you're letting them know if you like the way that they're pressing it or if you don't like the way that they're pressing it, so they can either let up or go harder. So yeah, stitches per inch. So denim top stitching is usually 7 to 8 stitches per inch. And the average is about 10 to 12 for light to medium weight wovens. Some knits need a higher stitch count so that there's more length to the stitch line when the stitches are stretched out. FYI. It says in general, shorter stitches produce more durable seams. When I do my bridal stuff, I always use a shorter stitch. That way I don't even need to back stitch. It just sort of everything stays together that way. But when you're on a knit, you're gonna have a little bit of a longer stitch. Okay, bill of materials. Bill of materials is the place where you house all of your trim information and all of your quality information, your fabric information. This is very, very important. Your bill of materials page is what your garment is gonna be costed against. You're gonna have your trims, you're gonna have your buttons, you're gonna have your zippers, you're gonna have anything that's put into this garment that needs to be ordered. So you're gonna have reference numbers, material numbers, you're gonna have colors, sizes, finishes. This is all very, very important. You need to have quantity. You need to know how many buttons that you have. If you're shipping an extra button, a little bag with the extra button, and sometimes it comes with a piece of thread, you need to indicate that. Where are they being placed? Center front, if you're doing a cardigan, your epaulette, are you going to have a button with it? Is it going to be on your elbow? All of these things. If it's dyed to match, DTM is what dyed to match is. If a button is dyed to match, if a zipper tape is dyed to match, using the resources that you have to find the quality of the trims that you need. And if you can't find it, if you don't have it, you can source it, which means that you can send out a quality or a trim that you like, a button that you saw. You can send it to your vendor and say, hey, I really like this. Can you find me something similar? And they're going to send you back options that you're going to choose from. That's a great option to do. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer because they have to look for it and then send it. So the other thing is labels. I think I talked about labels. Yeah, we talked about labels in the other video. Quality, inspection. So that is all that, I believe. In your book, since we are not together, you're probably not even listening to this video, there's great examples of tech packs and information that would be in the tech pack. Basically, your description is going to be there. Everything that you could possibly think of that's necessary to make this item needs to be in the tech pack. Bottom line. Thread, fiber content, labels, care instruction, testing, any design details, etc., etc. All right, so that's it from the book. A couple of things that I'm going to show you is the tech pack. So I'm going to share my screen. So, no, this is not what I wanted. Okay, here we go. Thinking you should be able to see this. Actually, I'll upload a separate video based on just the tech pack project. Okay, see you.